Another big topic that we hadn't really discussed here on the podcast yet is about paying college players. So, what's your idea in terms of allowing these players in the revenue sports, like specifically football and basketball? I know football is a higher revenue sport than basketball, but giving them, I guess, a piece of the pie. So they would say, so you would say, based on the fact that these sports and these coaches and the schools make so much revenue, paying the players some amount. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, on our last podcast, John Bryce mentioned a little bit of this when he talked about, you know, football is the cash cow for most of these universities.
Right.
And these athletic directors and presidents are saying, you've got to add another game. We need more money. We need money to fund these Title IX programs, these women's sports, and some of these non-revenue sports. And the only way you can get this money is by playing more games
Right.
and by being successful. Okay, so again, that breeds doing whatever you have to do to become successful. All right. Now, when it comes to paying players, I used to be against it, but I'm starting to be for it. And the reason I say that is because you look at these kids that come in and play. All right. There's so many, you got to do one of two things. Either you've got to pay the players, all right, because these kids come in with no money, all right. They can't go on a date. They can't go out to eat. They can't go home during a break because they can't afford it, all right. There's so many rules that say you can't help them to doing this. You can't give them a ride. You can't even give these guys a ride somewhere,
Yeah.
okay. So now what happens? Somehow these kids are going to get money, and it's going to be done through boosters. It's going to be done through athletic apparel. The money's going to be funneled through two or three different sources so that it can be laundered. And again, that brings up the situation where you have these problems. All right. So if you pay the players, all right, if you give them a so-called piece of the pie, they can succeed. They can have a normal college life. All right. That's one way to look at it. The second way to look at it may be set up a two-tiered system, okay? In other words, a large majority of college athletes, whether it be football or basketball, are not going to go to the professional level, okay?
Right.
They're just playing college football because they want to, all right?
Right.
So either you set it up where you say, hey, you either take the professional track or you take the non-professional track. And if you take the professional track, this is how it's going to be set up. And if you don't, then this is how it's going to be set up. I mean, I know that sounds kind of oversimplified, but you're right. I mean, we're coming to a point. I mean, I've thought it's going to happen before now, but it's getting to be this point where, eventually you're going to have these players, boycott. They're going to say, hey, we're not going to play in this Final Four game, okay, because we don't get anything out of it. We're bringing millions of dollars to this school, but we're not getting anything out of it. And let's say they get hurt, or let's say that they don't perform up to the level they're performing from. If they're not doing well in school, which a lot of them aren't, they're only
Right.
there because they want to make it to the NFL or the NBA, then they're drummed out. They don't even have an education. Okay. So either you got to set up a trust fund for these guys that says, okay, we're going to put this money in a trust fund for you. All right. So that when you get out of college, if you don't make it to the NBA, you have a nest egg of money there that you can at least start some sort of a career. All right. Or make some sort of a living. But if you make it to the NBA, then you can do what you want with this money, either give it to charity, do whatever you want with it. But there's got to be some system to set up to do that, because right now, these kids, they can't do anything. All right.
Yeah.
But they're making millions and millions of dollars for these guys. Okay.
Right.
And also you run into the apparel thing. You look at the NFL. Let's talk football for just 1 minute. Basketball is the same way. In the NBA or the NFL, they sell these jerseys with these players' names on it. Well, in college, you could buy jerseys too. You know as well as I do. How many times have we seen a Florida football jersey with the number 15 on it during
Yeah.
the time Tim Tebow was there?
Right.
Well, it may not have had Tebow's name on the back of it, but you knew pretty well that that was Tim Tebow's jersey. Okay.
Right.
Did he get any money off of that? No,
Yeah.
didn't get a penny off of that. But they were using his likeness and his success to make money for somebody, whether it be the athletic apparel manufacturer, whether it be the university, whether it be the NCAA, whatever. That money was being made and it was being funneled into places where it could do good for the schools. But the player didn't get a penny from it. All right. So yeah, you're right. I mean, they've got to either pay these players or set up some system where you can shut off this illegal money or this laundered money that's coming into the sport.
Right. So I'm thinking about like something like, and we'll just use college basketball as an example. Maybe something like how baseball has or each team has I guess you could even call it like, you could use the salary cap example or this example. Like baseball has when their teams are trying to sign international free agents. So maybe think of like a Yasiel Puig coming over from Cuba, or anybody like that. They have an amount of money in their international signing bonus pool money. All right,
Right.
so maybe you give a lot of the amount of money to these schools like Kentucky or Duke. You have $2 million, $3 million, whatever it is that you can give to these recruits as a signing bonus. Okay, so say you're Kentucky and you're recruiting the top guy in the country, and you negotiate a $1.5 million signing bonus. That's fine.
Right.
And you have whatever left to sign other recruits, right? So I think
Right.
that would also help the parity of the sport a little bit, because if you look at somebody like Duke, who I think, and I don't keep up with college basketball recruiting religiously like some people, but they've gotten, I think, three of the top guys in this next year's class to commit to them. Where on the surface, yeah, that's easy because you can get all the recruits you want, because you can just get as many guys you want, and who knows if these guys are paid anyway or not. But if you have some amount of salary cap or money pool limit where you can give out to these guys, well, if you have Kentucky somehow sign the top two recruits, well, they don't have any money left to give this other recruit. Well, and he thinks, hey, I'll go to Kansas or one of these other schools, right? So
Right.
I think that's one way you could do it, where you're not really paying them a salary, you're just giving them a signing bonus, to sign with your school. And if you use up your bonus money on one guy, then so be it. You can't get anybody else based on that. So I think that's one way you could do it. And I didn't think that. I'm sure there's potholes in that argument too, but that's just one way off the top of my head that I think would be good.
I think that's an excellent point. I mean, I've never heard it put that way, but I think it's an excellent point because, that would solve the problem because they're getting the money now, right? We
Yeah.
found it. We found that out this week, right?
Yeah.
That the money is getting to them somehow and is getting to them through illegal sources or through unethical sources. So you're right. If you give each school a pot of money that says, okay, this is what you've got for this year, you can use it as you see fit. Okay. So you're right. If you need this one guy and you think he's the best guy out there and you use the majority of your money, so be it. Then you're not going to get two or three of the other guys.
Right.
All right. I think that's a great idea. The other problem I think we've got going on here, which nobody wants to fess up to, okay, is that we keep hearing this student athlete. Okay. Well, that's ridiculous. All right. Now, for the majority of sports in college, everything but basketball and football, that is true. They are student athletes. Okay. They're playing their sports, whether it be tennis, golf, volleyball, you name it. Okay. Baseball, whatever it is. These are student athletes. Okay. They're not going to go pro. And if they go pro, all right, very, very few of them are going to go pro. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into basketball and football, yeah, there's some in there that are student athletes. All right. But the majority of them, when you look at the top schools in those sports, okay, they're not student athletes. Okay. They're not there for an education. I'm sorry to say that. People can laugh at me or be mad at me. They're not there for that. The top ones are there for one reason. They're there to fulfill a requirement because they have to.
Right.
All right. In football, they have to, right? They can't go to the NFL unless they go to college.
Right.
And in basketball, they have to go for at least 1 year. So they're going because they have to. They don't care about the school. They don't care about any reputation to that school. They don't care about any illegalities that may go on. They're there to stamp their ticket and fill that requirement until they can get on to their professional ranks. So I don't want to hear about student athletes. So that leads to your argument that, yeah, go ahead and pay them up front. Give them a signing bonus,
Yeah.
right? And if they come there, if they wash out, they've still got their signing bonus. Now it's up to them to be smart with it.
Right.
If they don't wash out, all right, fine. They've got their signing bonus. They can do what they want with it, and they can go on and make their professional career. But to sit here under this fake umbrella that says, oh, we're student. These are student athletes. We can't pay them because we're giving them an education. That's BS. Okay, that's BS. You're not giving them. You're giving them the chance for an education, but most of them aren't taking advantage of that.
Right. And that's the most ridiculous in basketball, because guys you really only have to be eligible past your fall semester, right? So
Exactly.
Once Christmas break rolls around and they enter their spring, they could basically quit going to class, because if they rule ineligible for the next term, they're gone anyway. So,
Exactly.
And in football, you have to at least be eligible for 3 years. Now, whether how that happens all the time, who knows? Either with some people, some programs, I'm sure. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's it's ridiculous, and again, more so in basketball because, like I just for the reason I just said, and also because guys are more of, you know, how do I want to put this? I guess because you only have to stay the 1 year, so you're more of a sure thing, I guess. Because
Right.
in football, you could be a 5-star recruit, say running back, whatever position, and you have the 3 years is a long time. So I mean, things could play out different ways. Maybe the school you committed to doesn't run the right offense that features you this way or that way, and it may hurt your draft stock here or there. You may not pan out, but in basketball, you play a handful or 15, 20 games in a season or so, and then probably more than that. But and then you're gone. So I think you're more of a sure thing in basketball. So guys are less inclined to even consider the school part at all. Whereas in football, that 3-year time period, you're not as much of a sure thing to get to the NFL.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to piggyback on that argument, in football, you've got to develop, right? I mean, if you've got 3 years there and let's say you're the top ranked quarterback coming out of high school,
right?
All right. Yeah. All right. You may be, but you've got to develop. I mean, you're not going to be able to play 3 years and turn that into an NFL contract unless you've become stronger,
right,
bigger, quicker on your release. Or if you're a running back, stronger, faster, being able to take hits. If you're a linebacker, a defensive back, whatever it is. So you've got to develop. All right. You've got to become better over those 3 years. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. In basketball, I would argue you don't have to. I mean, if you can shoot the lights out from 35 feet, I mean, I don't care how big, strong, fast you are. Nobody's going to be able to take that away from you, right? So if you're able to get that guy open on the perimeter, set up a screen, if he can shoot, he can shoot, period.
Yeah.
Okay? If he's a big man and he's able to be in the middle, I mean, he's going to be able to dominate for that 1 year. Now, when he gets to the NBA, he may have to develop, but he doesn't have to in college. So that's why, to go back to what you said, that's why if you change the rule more like baseball where they have to stay 3 years, now you've got a different situation. Okay, now you're going to have to get better. You're going to have to, sharpen your skills to be able to become an NBA player. And I think you're doing most of these kids a disservice because let's say you are the top recruit coming out of high school in basketball, and let's say that after 1 year you declare for the NBA draft, all right? Well, I mean, you may not be ready. I mean,
right,
you may have dominated in college, but you still may not be ready coming out because you're only 19 years old. And unless you're a LeBron James or a Kevin Garnett or one of these guys, you may struggle in the NBA. And if you don't get taken in the top round, if you get taken in the end of the second round or less than that, you're not going to make it. I mean, it's not going to happen.
That is going to be my next point. Is I think that, the one and done the way it is now, I think hurts the quality of the league a little bit because, basically, like you said, guys are coming out before they're ready, and they may get drafted, like you said, but they're not really having a career. I mean, they're not ready for the NBA, so they initially struggle, and then they get bounced around from team to team, and by 4 or 5 years, they're out of the league. And they went the one and done route, and you alluded to this earlier. They basically didn't go to college at all. They didn't go,
Right.
So that's kind of it for them. Whereas, guys, if you take it back years, guys like Michael Jordan, who widely is considered the best basketball player of all time, he went to college for 3 years.
Exactly.
A lot of guys in the '80s did that, '90s, and I think that that helped the NBA out because you had a more mature league where guys, when they got to the NBA, they had this 3 and 4 years of college under their belt. I think that the fact that there was as many teams probably total in the '80s and even early '90s, I think that helped the quality of the league play. And guys like LeBron and Kobe, and they're outliers that come out of high school and go on to have historic careers. So I think that obviously I'm not saying to mandate that you have to go to college for 3 or 4 years, but I think overall it helped the quality of play in the NBA as well.
Well, let's look at another point to go along with that. I mean, how many times you've been watching NFL games on Sunday? In college they play. Let's say you go to an Alabama or one of the top schools, you may play 13 games in college or 14 games. Okay, in the NFL you're going to play 16 games.
Yeah.
All right. Plus the preseason games, all right, plus the playoffs if your team is fortunate enough to make it there. So how many times have we heard on an NFL broadcast of a rookie when he gets into game 12, 13, or 14, hits the quote-unquote rookie wall,
Yeah.
Okay? Because they have to play, they're playing extra games, and the physicality of it, remember, is a whole lot greater because in college they're playing against athletes that might be of lesser quality than they are. In the NFL, they're not, okay? In basketball, it's even worse, right? In basketball, you may play 30 games in college if your team makes it to the Final
Right.
Four. In the NBA, you're playing 82 games,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And then when you throw in the playoffs, you're playing 3 times the amount of games you played in college. If you're 19 years old, okay, and you're not physically developed yet, because let's face it, most young men don't hit their prime until they're about 21 or 22. How are you going to be able to do that? How are you, when you hit game 50 and you're on the road, you know, I mean, that becomes quite a difficult situation for these young guys to maneuver. And you hit it right on the head. Unless you're an outlier like a LeBron James or one of these guys, you know, it's not going to work. And I would guarantee you, if you look at LeBron James in his first year,
Yeah.
I'll bet you he was not the player he is today.
No, obviously not. Yeah, a lot of guys
Okay.
weren't like that, right?
Okay. So that's exactly right. That's the disservice that's being done to these kids. And if you're a college coach, you don't care, right? I mean, if you get these kids for 1 year, you make it to the Final Four, they go on their way, you move on. Nobody really has the best interest of these players at heart. That's the issue that we're talking about here, is these players are getting used in the situation, and the schools are suffering the ramifications of the illegal, the illegal and unethical actions. So, yeah, I mean, you're right on.